Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day from all over the world where you're joining in from. My name is Bola, and I want to especially welcome you to my session where I'm going to be discussing on a very important topic, a topic that I'm very passionate about, and it's called driving business agility in Africa through the project economy. I personally believe that there is really no other time as important as this time to discuss this kind of topic, because I've been working with a couple of organizations in North America and Europe, and I see how important it is that they've given, and I see how important driving business agility is to those organizations. And I also see that the African continent or organizations in Africa are not giving as much. Organizations in Africa are not given the required attention to business agility. And that's why I have decided to present this topic to you. And I hope that at the end of this, you will be able to get one or two things that you can take to your organization, to your business, and start driving business agility in the African continent. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Bola Adesope. I consider myself as a business and agile transformation consultant. Over the years, I've got experience working as a business analyst or doing business analysis, where I help organizations to understand issues, to understand problems, to explore opportunities. I also do some advisory or recommendation as to what they need to do to solve some of those problems or explore the opportunities. I've also got experience across project portfolio management. I've got experience in change management, and I've done a lot of business transformation, either using Agile as a way of transforming or doing digital transformation for a couple of organizations in Europe, in Africa, and North America. My experience cut across Africa, North America, and Europe. I'm also the co-founder of Helping Other People Succeed, a social enterprise that provides career and mindset transformation to professionals across about 10 countries. And lastly, I am the lead coach and trainer for Stacy and Lloyd Consulting, a private global consulting company. Few recognitions or awards that I have won over the years. I write articles, I contribute to several bodies, and in 2018, my article was voted the most popular article on BA Times. Another article that I wrote in 2017 was voted as the article of the month of May 2017 by PM Times. I was best consultant in 2014. I won the strategy development competition in 2015. Last year, 2019, I won the Agile Emerging Speaker Toronto competition. I was recognized 2020 RBC Royal Bank of Canada Top 25 Canadian Immigrant finalist. I was also nominated for the 2020 Global Leadership Award. Earlier this year, I was invited by Dalhousie University, a university in Canada, to serve as a mentor on their hackathon, and the team that I mentored won the competition. I've also spoken at a number of events and conferences and seminars for PMI, for IIBA, Innovation Canada, meetups, seminars, conference, and all. And lastly, I am a regional mentor for Toronto Regional Immigration and Employment Commission. So that's a little about me. Now let's dive into the topic of today. The world that we live in right now is filled with a lot of uncertainties. Matter of fact, people call the world that we live in now the VUCA world, which means that there's a lot of volatility in the world, in the space where we live in. A lot of people don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's very volatile, the world that we live in. The world that we live in also is very uncertain. There's so many uncertainties in the world. Nobody is able to effectively articulate what's going to happen tomorrow or what the outcome of their idea or strategy is going to come with. It's going to be. We also live in a world that is very complex, very difficult, and very challenging to navigate. And lastly, we live in a world that is filled with ambiguity. In 2019, at the end of 2019, the CIO conducted a survey in in Africa where they asked business leaders in the African continent about the challenges or the problems that they are currently facing in their organization. And a lot of people reported several problems, but these are the common problems that the business leaders interviewed by CIO reported. The first one is complexity. And everybody understands how complex the world that we live in right now. So complex that it's very difficult, it's very challenging, it's very tough to navigate. Simple solutions are not efficient or effective to solve complex problems. Also, people reported that some of the competitions or some of the challenges that they face in their business is competition and disruption, time to market. Another set of people said that some of the challenges that they face is frequency of changes. Things are changing rapidly. We live in a super dynamic, highly volatile world. Something happens today, and tomorrow another thing happens that changes the situation of things that happened yesterday. Also, it's very challenging, the business leaders reported. It's very challenging, it's very difficult to understand the definitive needs of the customers. They don't really know what the customers want. And lastly, people motivation and rapid changes in technology. And if we have all of these challenges today, it's almost impossible for the strategy of today, for the method of today to help to solve the problems of today. There's this saying that the success that you get today will not be, I take that again. There's this popular saying that the solution that solves today's problem is not sufficient for tomorrow's problem. Or the solution that solved yesterday's problem is not going to be effective for today's problem. So if we understand that, if business leaders understand that the current approach, the current method, the current structure, the current culture of the organization is not sufficient to tackle today's business challenges, then what happens is we need a change. This is a very popular, I'll take that again. This is a very popular quote. I so much love this quote because while it was said some time ago, it's still as relevant as anything today. It was a quote from the guy called Rupert Murdoch. And what he says is, the world is changing very fast. While the world is changing, unfortunately, the African continent is not changing. While the world is changing globally, businesses in Africa are not changing. And as a result of this change, big will no longer beat small. It will be the fast beating the slow. This is one thing that the African continent and businesses in Africa have not realized. It's not going to be the big structure. It's going to be how fast you are to deliver or how fast you are to respond to change. And if the world is changing, if things are changing, if we live in a VUCA world, then it's only normal, it's only required for the businesses and organizations in the African continent to respond to the change. We can either continue the old way and continue to face the problem that we have today, or, I take that again. We can either continue the old way, the current way of working, or we'll find a new way. And there is no other time to find a new way than now. I like this quote from Andrew Grove, who says, a strategic inflection point is that moment when I'll take that again. A strategic inflection point is that moment when some combination of technological innovation, market evolution, and customer perception requires the company, requires an organization, requires a continent to make a radical shift or die. I so much love this quote. I love the way Andrew Grove put it. It's slightly different from the way Rupert Murdoch put it. If organizations refuse to change, they're not just going to be beaten by organizations that have adopted changes, but they're going to die. They're going to crush. So this is the right time. This is the most critical time for organizations in Africa, for the African continent, to change. And one of the ways to change is to adopt business agility. And what exactly is business agility, you may ask? Business agility is the ability of an organization to sense change, to sense a change in the direction that the market is going, to be able to very quickly and very swiftly respond to that change, and also adapt their method, adapt their approach, adapt their structure. An organization that operates in a state of business agility will be very quick to adapt to market changes. And we know that we live in a world that is constantly changing. We also need to respond rapidly and flexibly to customer demands. We should be able to sense change. We should be able to sense needs of the customers and the changes in the customer's need, and we should be able to respond very swiftly. We should be able to respond very flexibly to customer demands. And lastly, we should be at a competitive edge, continuously be at a competitive edge. The African business, the African market, the African organization need to start driving business agility more than ever before. And what are the pillars of business agility? What are the areas that an African market or African business or African continent needs to change to be able to drive business agility? Just 5 critical factors, just 5 critical elements or components of the organization. The first one is the mindset of African people, the mindset of African leaders, the mindset of African resources, the mindset of African talents. Mindset is all about your perception. Mindset is what influences your views. Mindset is what determines your actions and your reaction to things. Mindset is what informs your core values. And more than ever before, the African space, the African market, the African leaders, the African managers, the African employees need to start with a change in their mindset. 80% of successes of organizations or individuals start with a change in mindset. The actions that you take are defined by your mindset. Your behavior is defined by your mindset. And then the result that you get from the actions that you take are determined by your mindset. So the African continent, the African market, the African leaders and African businesses must first have a change in mindset. That's the first pillar of business agility. The second thing that organizations in the African continent need to start doing to drive business agility is to come up with a new set of principles that guide their operation. The third thing that they need to do is to rejig their core values. Also, to be able to drive business agility in the African market, to be able to ensure organizations operate in a state of business agility, there needs to be a restructuring of the African market. There needs to be a restructuring of the African company, of African market, or African organization. A total redesign of the structure of the organization. The way the African market, African organization is currently structured is not optimized for business agility. A lot of organizations are structured in a way that is counterproductive. More granularly, organizations in the African market operate in silo structure. And silo structure is not effective for business agility. Silo structure is not a driver for business agility. There needs to be a rejig, there needs to be a reorganization of the structure of the African market. One way is to flip the structure, to create a collaborative structure around value. and not exactly around function. Because typically you will find more than one functions coming together to be able to create value. But currently, a lot of organizations in the African community are structured using the functional approach. And because of those functional approach, those structures, those units within the business look and operate as though they were separate entities. And for organizations to start driving business agility, we need to flip the script. We need to flip the structure. We need to rearrange the structure. And lastly, there needs to be a change in the culture of the organization, a change in the culture of the African people, a change in the culture of the African business. We're going to go into, in this presentation, I'm just going to identify the principles and the values to drive business agility in the market. I'm going to start with the values. And I have adopted the Agile principle, I'll take that again. And I've adopted the Agile Manifesto in determining the set of values that African market, African organization should start enabling. It was 2001 when a group of software developers got together somewhere in the US and they started discussing about the way they're working and the things that they're deriving from the new approach that they're using. And at the end, they came up with what is popularly now known as the Agile Manifesto, and it identifies some values. And for businesses in Africa, for organizations in Africa, for the African continent, to start driving business agility, they need to look at some of the values from the Agile Manifesto. So I read the Agile Manifesto to you. It says, we're uncovering better ways of developing software because at that time, they were software developers. But organizations can adopt and adapt these values. They're not really limited to software development alone or technology organizations alone. We're uncovering better ways of developing products. We're uncovering better ways of delivering services. We're uncovering better ways of working by doing it and helping others to do it. And through this work, we've come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. One value that African organizations to start adopting is people over processes. They should focus more on the people that they have and not exactly on the processes. The processes are good, but the interaction within the people is better. Also, they said, we've come to value working software over comprehensive documentation. Another value that businesses and organizations in the African continent should start embedding, should start adopting in driving business agility is a focus on outcome over output. Focus on the change that we're driving. Focus on what is of value to the customer or the users or the market. Outcome over output. Working product over comprehensive documentation. The third is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Another value that African markets should adopt in driving business agility is customer engagement, customer interaction, customer collaboration, proximity to the users, proximity to the customer, proximity to the market. And lastly, responding to change over following a plan. Adaptability is another value that organizations in the African market should start adopting. For organizations, for the African market to drive business agility, they need to change their values, and the values should speak to focusing on people over processes, empowering the people that work in the organization, giving the people autonomy, because people are more creative than processes. Processes are good in and by themselves, but empowering people to deliver is more important than faith in processes. The greatest asset that every organization has is the people, the talent. Also, another value that organizations in the African market should start adopting is focus on outcome over output, deliverable focus over task, result focus. The third set of values should be customer collaboration, proximity to the market, closeness and close engagement with the users, with the market, with the customers. And lastly, adaptability. Organizations in Africa should be adaptive. These are some of the values that organizations need to drive to be able to adopt and drive business agility. The next component is the set of principles that should guide the operations of the African market in adopting and driving business agility. Again, I've adopted and adapted the Agile principles to this. The first priority, the number one priority of every organization in Africa should be to satisfy the end users, should be to satisfy the customers. Because organizations exist for the purpose of meeting the needs and demands of customers. Organizations will continue to exist if they continue to satisfy their users or their customers, or their stakeholders, or the business. Focus more on satisfying the customer. This should be one of the principles that should guide the operation and existence of the African market. The second principle that should guide the operations of the African market is adaptive to change. Constantly anticipating and welcoming change. Because there's really no way that there won't be changes in the market. Change, they say, is a constant thing. Look at change as an opportunity to deliver better. Look at change as an opportunity to correct things. Look at change as an opportunity to meet the needs of the users or the stakeholders. Be receptive to change. Always welcome change. Anticipate and welcome change. The third principle that organizations in Africa should be guided by or should uphold to be able to drive business agility is to always deliver value to their customers, constantly deliver, frequently deliver. The fourth one is to enable collaboration between the several entities within the ecosystem of an organization. The customers, the business, the technical team, everybody should work together as against working in silos. That's the fourth principle that organizations should adopt in driving business agility. The second one, the fifth one, is to enable trust and support in the organization. A lot of people, a lot of leaders in the African market don't trust their employees, and a lot of employees in the African market or African organization don't trust their leaders. For organizations to be able to drive business agility, there should be trust across the ecosystem. The customers should trust the organization. The organization should trust the market. The leadership should trust the employees. The employees should trust their leaders. The sixth principle is to continue to encourage face-to-face conversation. The seventh one is to focus on working product, focus on delivering valuable service. This should be the principle that every organization in the African continent should adopt or should uphold or should be guided about to be able to drive business agility. The eighth principle is sustainable development, sustainable delivery. The ninth one is continuous attention. Constantly pay attention to the direction that the market is going. Constantly pay attention to the actors in the market. Constantly pay attention to the factors that are influencing the direction that the market is going. Constantly pay attention to the needs of the customers, the need of the employees. Constant attention. The third principle is simplicity. There's this popular saying in that simplicity is great. simple, efficient delivery, simple system, simple product, simple service, simple structure. The 11th principle is self-organizing team, team empowerment, team autonomy. The leadership of the African market should allow the organizations, should allow the teams in their organization to self-organize, should allow the teams in the organization to have autonomy, as against micromanagement. Micromanagement will not help in driving business agility in the African market. And then lastly, reflect and adjust. Organizations in Africa should constantly reflect on the value that they're delivering, on the people that they have, on the processes that they're using, and adjust constantly. 11, they should empower the team. They should engage the team. They should give the team autonomy. And they should check, measure, and adjust on how they're delivering, how they're performing, how they're working. There's a saying that what you don't measure, you can't improve. And you can't measure things without reflecting. Organizations should not just measure performance in terms of numbers. Organizations in Africa should measure performance in terms of people engagement, in terms of processes, in terms of the value that they're delivering to the customers, in terms of their adaptation to the market and the changing needs of the customers. And they should adjust accordingly. So these are the principles that the African market should start upholding, that the operations in the African market should be guided by to actually drive business agility in the continent. Because there are changes that we're implementing, there will be several levels of reactions to those changes. And that's understandable. It usually will start with people who say things like, I want things to be as I say because I don't care about you. These are people who are not receptive to change. These are people who don't welcome change. These are people who are somewhat selfish. And that's normal. Now, to drive business agility, to drive change in the African market, organizations, leadership, consultants, people will need to work with this kind of people to help them see the limitation in the current process and the opportunities, the benefit in the new ways of working in business agility. You also see a lot of people react to changes by saying things like, while I like changes, I don't like the proposed change. This is usually out of fear. Because they feel that this change is going to affect them negatively. Also, you'll see people who react in a particular way like, I don't understand why we need to change. These are people who have a sense of feeling that everything is going on well. But even if things are going on well right now, even if things are going on well today, remember we live in an uncertain world. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And we need to be in a state where we're able to, one, sense the change, respond to the change, and adapt as quickly and as swiftly as possible. And then you're going to see people who say, well, I don't understand why we must change. Most of these people will require a lot of coaching, will require a lot of mentoring for them to be able to adopt change. Lastly, not everybody will adopt change at the early stage of the change. It's understandable. The people who will welcome change very quickly, the people who will spend a lot of time before they adopt the change. So this is understandable, and this shouldn't be seen as an obstacle when organizations are driving business agility, when organizations are driving change. The people who are naturally laggards or late majority in change adoption, it's okay. Just focus on the early adopters, focus on the early majority, focus on the innovators, and drive those change with those people. And start celebrating early wins, early successes. These are ways to get the late majority or laggard to adopt the change. So those are ways of adopting change or driving business agility in the African market, one, we need to have a change of mindset because business agility is a change. We need to have a change in our mindset. We need to adopt a mindset that focuses on value. Secondly, we need to change our core values. We need to start adopting new set of values that help in driving business agility. Thirdly, we need to change our principles. We need to start moving to principles that help to drive business agility. We need to also do a complete redesign of our organizational structure and culture. So that will be the end of my presentation, Driving Business Agility in Africa Through the Project Economy. I want to thank you very much for coming to my presentation. I hope you've gained one or two things, and I hope you can go back to your organization and start driving change and start driving business agility. Thank you, and I will see you some other time. Bye for now.